One of the hottest topics in fantasy hockey is who do you take first from this Vancouver Canucks team loaded with talent, which is why on the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, it's a top 5 fantasy breakdown for the Vancouver Canucks. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back inside the lab to the Friday edition of your daily source for fantasy hockey news, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. The only terms that you'll be hearing out of today's episode, my friends, straight fantasy fire, a very special guest, Blake Creamer of the Apples and Ginos podcast, fantasy hockey aficionado. Make sure you check him out at Blake Creamer AG on X, Twitter. How you like it, what you should like about today's episode. Top 5 fantasy targets on the Vancouver Canucks, a team very near and dear to your heart, Mr. Creamer. Thank you so much for joining us first and foremost. Really appreciate your time and, of course, your insight on this Vancouver Canucks team, which is now a little bit in question with this Thatcher Demko news of this week. Over to you, my friend. How you doing? What are you up to on the Apples and Ginos? Get the plugs in, and then let's get to biz.
You bet. Let's get to biz. It's nice to see you boys. My brothers in fantasy. All right. That's what we do. You guys are crushing it this offseason, man. I just want to say I love these top 5 teams that you guys are doing. This is some awesome content. So great job there. I'm happy to be here as usual, and I'm looking forward to getting into it with you guys.
Absolutely love having you on, Blake. It's been too long. We've been trying to work around the schedule. We got 3 different people working on East Coast. We got Blake over there on the West Coast, but we finally got the date, and we're breaking down a very hot team that a lot of fantasy GMs out there really want to hear about and hear the breakdown of these Vancouver Canucks. We're getting to the last 5 teams in the NHL flip, and we're getting probably to one of the hottest ones out there right now. We get one of our favorite guests on, Blake Creamer, so it's going to be a fantastic episode. And I know it's going to be hot because we're going to be talking about my boy JT Miller out there. You guys come in with the slander off the episode already. Don't disrespect the mustache. I'm looking out there. That photo's looking peak Miller right now, so I can't wait to break it all down. And I guess let's just jump into our first target from this Canucks team. And I already mentioned his name. It's my boy JT Miller. Look, I know we're going to be splitting hairs on this episode, especially when it comes to Miller, Pettersson, and Quinn Hughes, top 3 targets most likely. But for me, 1A, 1A, 1B. For me, 1A is JT Miller. I know Pettersson, he's on the come up right now. He looked fantastic last year. He's filling out he's filling out the peripherals very steadily. The physicality that he's bringing to the game right now. But for me, the durability, the consistency that JT Miller is showing us over the last 4 seasons. Again, the peripherals that he brings, over 200 shots a year, over 200 hits, Banger League beauty, finally he cracks 100 plus points last season. For me, it's got to be JT Miller, who is the number 1 target.
Take it away, Blake. I need you to weigh in, pal. In very few scenarios in my entire life have I felt I'm going to be the quiet one on today's episode, but please take it away, my friend.
You bet, buddy. First off, we got to give Steele his flowers. Flip, we got to give him his flowers. Sure. I had to listen to the episode again. I'm like, okay, what was said here? Because, Steele, you and I got into it over the year. We fought like brothers, and we make up like brothers.
Yes, we did.
And that's what we do. But, you called JT Miller as a first rounder last year, and he finished first round in every format. Right. So I think that the clear number 1 to me is JT Miller. It has to be JT Miller, but there's some stuff here with this team that is leading me to think that there's some regression coming, not just for Miller, but for all the players. Right. And Flip, I listened to our old episode there, and you chirped me a bit, said, is there any Canuck that you don't like this year? And I'm like, I don't know. And look, I'll take some wins there. The Canucks had a great year, obviously, but a lot of this was massively unsustainable, right? So a couple things just before I get into Miller here. Canucks led the league in 5-on-5 shooting percentage, right? So they were number 1, and they also led in PDO at all strengths. So PDO is basically, for your listeners that don't know, the sum of a team's shooting percentage and its save percentage.
Yeah, keep it simple for some of us laymen's out
there
here.
You go.
Like some of us are, already a couple of Bud Lights deep, so keep it tight.
I got you. PDO basically is just a luck metric, right? It's one big luck stat. It's just an indicator of a team's performance that may be due to positive or negative regression. And the Canucks, for reference, last year, they were 7th in the league at 5-on-5 shooting percentage, but they were 20th in PDO. All right. And that's what happens when Thatcher Demko gets injured. But anyway, that all said, there were so many career highs for Miller this year. Career high shooting percentage, career high on-ice shooting percentage by a large margin, right? Goals, power play points, right? So to me, I think these are all things that should give us pause at the very least, right? Something we're doing over at Apples and Ginos is we're doing these drafts with our Discord, and we've actually got an in-house ADP, which is pretty damn nice.
Nice.
And what we've got from Miller, he's going at 19.4, which is pretty good. I mean, but that's not first round Miller, right? In Yahoo, I think he's going a little bit earlier in Yahoo. But anyways, I still think that what we saw this last year from Miller is ceiling Miller. There's nothing else there.
100%.
There's no more that he can give. Like everything he does is based on efficiency and his teammates' efficiency. And I'm expecting that to just come down just a little bit. But that said, I mean, Steele, the periffs are not going away. They are not going away, right? And I know that you guys love category leagues. That's how you guys sort of value. And that's what I'm kind of picking up on your stuff here. So anyways, long story short, to me, Miller is probably a 90-point player, not a 100-point player. But with those type of periffs, I think you got to get this guy like power play points. I think that's here to stay. So I'm happy with Miller, but I'm still looking at a second round. In a Cats league, I'm taking him at the end of the first. But to me, in a points league, I'll probably hit him early second to mid second round.
What Steele and I like to cop out a little bit on this show, Blake, by saying it obviously depends on your format. Yeah, we do lean to categorical. It's what we do in our listener leagues. Yeah. I think it's also a little bit more complicated to find players that fit that mold. So I'm not coming on here to disagree with either of you, and I am glad that I have Elias Pettersson at number 1. And let me please explain, because neither of you are wrong. But Blake teed it up for me so nicely. We've seen ceiling Miller. We're not even scratching it yet with Elias Pettersson. I believe he's only 25, 26 years old, just entering his prime. Is the safer play here taking Miller at 1? 100%. Do the peripheral values a little bit higher for JT Miller, especially in PIMs, especially in hits? Of course. However, what I'm looking at here with Elias Pettersson, and I also very much appreciate your take on this Canucks team overall, Steele, Blake, well, both of you, I guess, is are they going to be able to run through a team in that division like the Edmonton Oilers? They're just not built to do it. However, we're talking about fantasy, not the standings. So the elite level options are here for this team. I'm going with Pettersson. I'm expecting a triple-digit point season from a player that we are seeing progress nicely. Did his playoff performance perhaps hurt his overall fantasy view? Maybe. But maybe that means you can get him at a sneaky good round. I'm loving the offensive output from a player that really can do it all when he's on his game. Has he been inconsistent? Yes. But maybe just to play devil's advocate, I'm going to go with the more talented player, Steele and Blake, that I think is poised for, I'm not going to say breakout because he's already been at an elite level. I'm going to say triple-digit point season, outscoring Miller, I'm going to say right now by 20 or more points, and bringing a whole ton of offensive value. That's my take on it, and I'm glad to be a little bit different because obviously JT Miller slots in at number 2 for me.
That is a hot take right there. 20
I don't think it's that hot.
20-point differential from JT Miller.
Take a look at JT Miller's career and then talk to me about it. The body of work is hovering around about 55 points on average before coming to Vancouver.
Hey, we talked about sometimes you age like fine wine, and he's just hitting his prime right now. But look at the first 3 seasons of Elias Pettersson, 3 seasons of 60-plus points, all under 70 points, and now he's getting into that target. I agree wholeheartedly with what Blake said. I think we're going to see a slight regression. We're seeing peak JT Miller for what you both just said, and so that's a valid point. I'm putting JT Miller from 15th to 20th overall in the fantasy draft. So I'm not even putting him in the first round right now. I'm looking at mid-second, early, anywhere in the second, honestly, depending on how many GMs in your league. And then Elias Pettersson anywhere from 20 to 25. So for me, it's splitting hairs. It's 1A, 1B. I don't think Pettersson, look, there's a possibility for it, but I'm putting Pettersson and JT Miller, both of them right around the 90-point to 95-point mark this upcoming season.
Yep.
Blake?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, so Pettersson's your number 2 as well, Steele?
Pettersson's my number 2, yeah.
Gotta be.
My number 2,
Well,
Quinn Hughes.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So, and it's close. Like I don't want to talk any, slander on Pettersson. Like the guy's amazing, but Flip, to your point, I've dug in on the metrics on this player, and I don't see how he gets any higher than what he did in his big year, right? 102 points. Like
that is triple digits, just to be fair.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, that to me is like he had to do a lot of things to get there. First off, he had the career high in shots to goal over 60, career high, right? He also he led the league in IPP that year. And that went from 86% that year to now 63% or whatever it was the last year. So that's like the outlier to me.
Yeah, he led the league in shorthanded goals that year too, which helps the number.
Yes. So to me, like I've done some hockey projections here, and I projected Pettersson for 90 points, which I feel really good about. I projected Miller for 94, I think. Yeah, 95.
Whoa.
So to me, it's just about how's he going to get there. That's all, right?
Sure.
Like, and I agree with everything you said about the talent that this player has, but we still need to see who is going to be on his wing, right? We got a player in Jake DeBrusk come in here. Who's going to be on the other side? Is it going to be the slinky Daniel Sprong? We don't know. It could be, Danton Heinen, could be, Niels Höglander, P.S. Suter. Who are they going to put on that right side? So
sure.
There's some questions there, but obviously the acumen's really good with Pettersson. I'm talking about Pettersson at 3. I'll talk about Hughes in 1 second if you guys will have me do that. But
of course.
I feel good about this player. And to your point as well, Flip, I think he's going to be got at value because of the narrative around this player.
Yeah, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, I believe he was playing through injury. He had a knee injury that was bothering him. And it's a tale of 2 seasons for Pettersson. He had 58 points in the first 44 games.
And to be fair, there is so many other things to break down with this team. Let's get to break. Let's talk about the rest of this top 5, because obviously Thatcher Demko's injury concern, shout out to Rick Dollywall for the latest, obviously impacts this top 5 list. And you're throwing out some names, Blake, that's not making me feel super confident about this Vancouver team. Danton Heinen, Daniel Sprongs, a lot of iffy options here. However, elite fantasy options. So let's talk about them right around the break. A lot more to get to with our friend Blake from Apples and Ginos and the rest of this Vancouver Canucks team. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Indeed. You need to hire? You need Indeed, your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Listeners of our show right now get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked-on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked-on right now. Support the show by saying you heard about it on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, make sure you go enjoy and tune into the Locked On NHL Podcast. They are here to provide you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team across the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Once again, make sure you go tune into the Apples and Ginos podcast, where Blake co-hosts with his brother over there, Nate, as well as go tune into the Cream of the Crop podcast
after this podcast.
After the podcast, of course. You got to watch this one and then over there. But absolutely killing it with the content this summer. Yeah, sorry, we got to plug ourselves in there first, but
makes sense.
Blake, absolutely killing it this season with the content, the fantasy episodes, the breakdowns, everything you do. Love what you bring to this hockey community, fantasy wise. So thank you again so much for tuning in and coming on to this episode once again. And like I said, it's been way too long, but continuing the conversation, I know we got a little bit of a mixed bag here for this top 5 list. Flip over there going with Elias Pettersson, putting him 20 points ahead of JT Miller. Quinn Hughes coming in for Blake at number 2. We got some mixed bags right now, so I want to throw it over back to Blake. Why do you got Quinn Hughes at number 2 right now over Pettersson?
Well, first off, I mean, even just looking at last season, Quinn Hughes had 92 points, Pettersson had 89, right? So it's not the wackiest take in the world, right? And I love both players, don't get me wrong there. But me, the reason I would choose Hughes over Pettersson at this point is value over replacement, right? There is not a lot of players that provide this level of offense from the back end. In fact, there's like
It's true.
3, maybe 4, right? And Quinn Hughes'
Maybe 4,
opportunity and deployment is not going away. He's on an upward trajectory. Like this guy, I don't see how his production is going to go down that much. I have him projected for 87 points, right? And that's factoring in all this regression. I'm talking with the team. Like they just run everything through him. Like when I was digging in on JT Miller and like some of the things that he brings to the table, one of the things that he does more than anybody else on the Canucks is passes to the point, right? So it's like everything's running through, like that means Miller to Hughes, right? And that's how they're running the offense in zone on the power play. And that's not going to change, right? And that's why both those players are so valuable. So,
well, yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
To interject, though, and not to be rude, I just was reading earlier today that Alvin's touching on that they might actually break up Roenick and Hughes. That a concern for you for his everything that you're talking about? Because you're talking about passes to the point. I know one of the reasons that they're concerned about this is their second and third pairing D-men having serious trouble breaking the puck out. Roenick and Hughes doing that obviously very well together last year. So not to interrupt you, but if they do break them up, which I have a feeling that would be a bolder move than leaving together a pairing that clearly worked last year. If that happens, you worried about that point total at all? Because if he's not playing with Roenick, I might have some concerns about those numbers.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about it. Quinn Hughes is the type of player that drives his own offense. He makes his own success, right? And that said too, though, like you said, Hronek and Hughes together worked. It worked really well. They played most of the season together. And, that's fine. Alvin says that, but he's not coaching the team. You know what I mean? Rick Tocchet is coaching the team. So I think,
I think he has a hand in it though, Blake, but I feel you.
Yeah. So I'm not too worried about that, but there is one thing I am a little bit concerned about with Quinn Hughes is his shot total, right? That went up massively over this year. And we have to wait to see this season. Is that the outlier or is he that player now? Is he a guy that's like he upped his shots to goal per 60 and his individual scoring chances for per 60, both like to career high numbers, right? And I think they're sustainable. I think that's the player he is. But what do you guys think? I mean, are these shots that Quinn Hughes is taking, like, is that going to be something that happens this season? Like career high 17 goals as well.
Well, I think that's what we're seeing from a lot of young defensemen right now. And I want to bring in Miro Heiskanen as well as Evan Bouchard from what we saw this last year with them. They're both 24, 25 years old. They're just getting sort of into their prime, getting chemistry with some new lineups. Like, again, like what you both said, played spectacularly well with Philip Roenick as that D pairing. I would be a little surprised if they break that up. I understand, spreading the love a little bit and having some help on that second D pairing. But for me, Quinn Hughes, I think this is, again, it's hard to put projections on, but I don't think this last season was an outlier. And when you do the comparisons of where we're putting them in this top 5 list, small advantage point wise for Quinn Hughes, small advantage power play point wise for Quinn Hughes as well. I think Quinn Hughes falls exactly in that tier with both JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. It could really be 1A, 1B, 1C for these top 3 studs on the Vancouver Canucks. However, I do have Quinn Hughes as that third option from the Canucks draft board for the Canucks draft board. I see Quinn Hughes again falling somewhere late second, mid third, somewhere in that realm right now. I'm putting a lot more emphasis, and I've been doing this for the last 10 episodes we've done, a lot more emphasis on the offensive side of things. Even though he brings it, again, he's the playmaker. He's quarterbacking the power play. He's quarterbacking from their defensive zone, breaking out those pucks, which he does so nicely. But JT Miller and Elias Pettersson are going to be the ones really in the offensive zone getting theirs. Goal totals is a huge thing in fantasy realm as well. So for me, Quinn Hughes comes in at number 3. I don't think that was an outlier. I'm still projecting him, all 3 of these players for 90 to 95 points.
Norris Trophy winning Quinn Hughes got to honestly think about how much, I don't want to say disrespect, but almost not enough love that this player has gotten for the amazing season that he had. And I understand a Norris Trophy on your shelf, but when you talk about even players that you and I have been going on about, Steele and Evan Bouchard, Cale Makar, and, the Norris Trophy winner is in the 3rd or 4th slot in terms of D-men in the league, that's telling me that we are in store for a sensational season of blue line play.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just spit it out. Pettersson, Miller, Hughes, unless Blake's off the board here with his 3rd. Those are the 3 top players on this Vancouver Canucks team. That's easy. Where it gets a little tricky now, especially with Thatcher Demko's injury, and I'm going to throw out a few stats for our stat boy Blake down there. Canucks tied for 5th last season with 109 points. They beat Nashville 4-2 in the first round, bow out to a really good Edmonton Oilers team in 7 games. They were close. However, 10th best power play, pretty good. 14th best penalty kill, not as good. Where I wanted to point out is Demko would be right here for me at number 4. If he was healthy, we don't know. It's sounding like they might be testing the goalie market. Blake, you chime in on this in a second. However, the Canucks allowed the 6th least shots against per game last season, and they are going to need to do that once again if a rookie goaltender in Artur Shilovs, who proved he can be a big game goalie, make a big save for sure. Sample size, very small, and he is still a 3rd string option on most teams headed into last season. So over to you, Blake. I got Brock Boeser at 4. Thatcher Demko would have taken that spot, though. He doesn't, and I have concerns about the back end of this team, especially when you got to go through the best offensive unit and power play in the Edmonton Oilers a bunch of times this year. You don't want Artur Shilovs back there if you can have Thatcher Demko, obviously.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And it's not great news, right? That's not what you want to hear. Like the whole offseason, we're like, okay, he's resting up. He's going to be nice and healthy going into the season. Mm-hmm. And then this report comes out that, where there's smoke, there's fire. Like, I bet it's worse than even what they're reporting. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Like if they're saying this, that means like, yeah, things are bad. And they're looking at the goalie, position right now to try and shore it up. So it's not good to me. My list though, I wouldn't like, and this is maybe not something you guys agree with, but Demko's not in my top 5. Whether he's healthy or not. So, here at what we do at Apple.
Shout out the 0G.
I'll shout out the 0G. It's basically, I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but it's a draft strategy where you basically fade goalies. It's not rocket science, but the TLDR version is you spend less draft capital on goalies than your opponent, right? And then you still try and draft the guy who's going to be a number 1, but the idea is you don't put a bunch of draft stock into a goalie. So if he stinks, you just kick him to the curb. You aren't like, oh, come on, Vasilevsky, like, please start playing better, right? Because he had a stinky year, which, is an outlier to me. But it comes with its positives and its negatives for sure. Yeah, you got to be on top of it. But anyways, for me, I read a report today that they're looking at Kevin Lankinen. I actually wouldn't mind that. If they go Kevin Lankinen on the Canucks, I think Lankinen and Shilov.
Shilov? Dang.
I liked Kevin Lankinen though. And this is, to me. I'll
take Joseph Wall and Anthony Stolarz. Just saying.
This is a Band-Aid, right? It's a Band-Aid. Right? They're not Thatcher Demko, but I do like Lankinen. Anyways, I'm digressing on that. My number 4 is Brock Boeser.
Yeah,
all
me
right.
Too.
That beautiful head of hair, that lettuce. I don't know. Yeah, I think he's going to be real good this year. And I think his floor is very solid because he has access to that power play. But one of the things, and I'll flip it over to you here, Steele, is he's not a guy that can drive his own offense, right? And I really don't like that. He's a supplementary piece, right? And a great one at that. But he's attached to Miller, and Miller whips passes with the best of them, right? I mean, Boeser's tapping in a lot of these goals. His scoring chances are crazy, but he doesn't shoot a lot, and his success is based off of massive efficiency. And at his ADP, to me, it's a little bit rich. Like he's at 58 on Yahoo. Our A&G ADP is 74, and I'm not touching him there.
Yeah, and we're going to continue diving on Brock Boeser. Just real quick, we do got to get to break, wrap up. You come back with the last 2 spots on this top 5 targets list for the Vancouver Canucks. But real quick, this episode is also brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when buying your tickets to your next big event. That's why we always use the Game Time app. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Game Time has a new feature as well called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can even save even more money with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or on the event. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And once again, thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast. hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. Blake, I do want to throw it back over to you and just have a general conversation about Brock Boeser, because clearly this was, to me, the outlier of all Vancouver Canucks. He's never once before hit over 30-plus goals. He hits 40 last year. Never once before over 60-plus points. He hit 73. He was a plus 23 as well. Like you said, hasn't really shot the puck a lot, but gets over 200 plus shots last season. So for me, I think this is the real interesting conversation, because like you said, Yahoo has him ranked at 58, 59 right now. Where do you actually put him, and where do you actually take him going into this upcoming draft? Like you said, he can't run it by himself. He's not that type of player. He's going through JT Miller. He's going with Elias Pettersson. You know, for the most part, over the last 4 seasons, he has been pretty healthy compared to the first 4 seasons he was in the NHL. So that is a very positive sign to see with this player. But for me, he does come at 4th on my list off this board for the Vancouver Canucks. But I don't think I'm even looking at Brock Boeser until at least the 8th or 9th round, just because, again, I've never seen him hit 40 goals before. He's always been that 25, 30 goal type of player, 55 points at the end of the season with a couple of missed games. So that's where I'm placing him. I know you have him at 4. Flip, do you also have Brock Boeser at 4?
Yes, sir.
So you went Thatcher Demko at 4, right?
No, I said I would have if I wasn't very
Okay.
uncertain about him even touching the ice for the first month of the season. Look, shout out to Rick Dhaliwal one time. He is one of my favorite beat reporters in the NHL. I read and listened to his interview from this week, Blake. I'm sure you're all over it. Dhaliwal had like a deep, agonizingly long pause when he was asked when he thinks Demko is going to return. And that tells me exactly what Blake was saying. It sounds worse than it is. So Brock Boeser, for me, also crushed it in the playoffs and looked sensational. Yeah. So I like Demko. I like what you guys are saying. Boeser at 4. Blake, we're here to listen to you. Take it away, pal.
Yeah, I don't have too much more on Boeser, but I'm with you, Steele, what you said there. To me, it's after pick 100, that's when I'm looking at Boeser as value, because to me, this is more of a 30 and 30 guy. So not a 40 and 30 guy. But to me as well, like, this is a guy that's been through major personal hardships over the years. And so what we saw last year is a mentally healthy, a physically healthy Brock Boeser. And we saw a ceiling as well, I think. Like, he shot 19.6% on the season. That's going to go down, right? He is an efficient player because of where he scores most of his goals, which is net front, right? Or, you know, in high danger scoring areas. But yeah, exactly. So to me, I think 60 to 65 points is where Boeser lives. And that's good enough for me for 4th on the team. But it's, you know, I'd rather pick up a player that is generating more shots and more chances and is able to drive their own offense a little bit more. And there is going to be players around, you know, pick 74 or pick 58 that do that a lot better than Boeser.
I agree, Blake, big time. Steele, you want me to just spit out number 5 to get you guys fired up a little bit more? Or Kevin
Lankinen, right
here. About that. You're on mute again, pal, but there he is.
Give it to us. Give us the 5th pick here.
Hey, look, this is how valuable he is to the team. It's Rick Tocchet at 5. I'm taking him. No, I'm kidding. He doesn't have. No, but hold on. This team, and I've got some side notes here, because fantasy is one thing, but you know, I got to talk about this team overall. 2 years ago, a complete mess. You have that press conference of Jim Rutherford, the bloodbath, or whenever, how long ago that was. And to bring in Rick Tocchet, one of the best coaches clearly in the NHL, and turn this team around, that's just what I need to come on here and say is, to start the year, if you got to put pressure on Lankinen, Sheelovs, or whoever, Patera, who did they bring in the offseason? Another. It leaves for a powder keg-like situation in terms of a bad start, getting behind the Edmonton Oilers. You're not going to take that division, and then you're a little bit more interesting in terms of how we look at this team week to week. However, let me spit out my 5th piece so that you guys can both chirp me. And maybe I'm just drinking into the 7-year deal that was handed to him. But I like what I think is going to happen for Jake DeBrusk, especially if you look at, he's going to play somewhere on that left side in the top 6, whether it's on JT Miller's flank or Elias Pettersson's. I'm going to read into a guy that last year finished triple digits in hits. Yeah, he's definitely underwhelmed. I think he's been one of those fantasy pieces that you always kind of peg him to bounce out and break out, and he hasn't done it. 40 points last year, a regression. I like Jake DeBrusk here. I think he's finally found a home. The money has been put in him. He doesn't need to worry about, I think, minutes go up. I love the angles of playing with Pettersson or with JT Miller, whatever happens. Is it a little bit riskier than others, perhaps? I like Jake DeBrusk here at 5th off the board. Although Artur Shilovs, Thatcher Demko, I don't know what's going on in the cage, which I know I sound like a broken record. That's really throwing a wrench in how I'm looking at some of these pieces, Blake, because I don't know what to do when you have to rely on a player in Shilovs who really doesn't have that sample size. I don't feel comfortable targeting that player in the slightest.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And I will talk on Jake DeBrusk here, but I am concerned about the goalie situation, but I think that, to your point, Rick Tocchet has done an amazing job here. Like, this team has structure now, whereas under Bruce Boudreau, they didn't. So one thing about goalies, and I've had Kevin Woodley from NHL.com on the pod a couple times. This guy's amazing. You guys should get him because it's one of the best interviews I've ever done. And he talks about team environments and goalies that do well in certain environments. And I think that the Canucks have a great defensive team environment. And I think that Shilovs can have success in a limited time in that environment. Right. So I'm not too concerned, but obviously we need Demko in here. We're not going to go through the season with Artur Shilovs, but I'm not as doom and gloom as you are about the goalie situation. But what I am in agreement on is Jake DeBrusk. Oh yeah, buddy. There's no one else it can be, in my opinion, besides, I think that Jake DeBrusk is built for this team. I think that, you know what it reminds me of actually is when JT Miller came here from Tampa Bay.
Oh,
right. You got a guy with acumen, right? This is a first rounder. He comes over here and, like, with Boston first, he did have pockets of opportunity, right? He had top line with Pasternak sometimes. He would get on the power play 1, but nothing was consistent. But I think when he comes here, there's a spot on power play 1 that should be his, in my opinion, for what you said. Like, they signed him to term and money, right? That, like, it's either him or Connor Garland on the top power play, and Jake DeBrusk to me is better at puck battles, right? I think he's better at the forecheck. I think he can get the puck to Miller and, let Hughes go nuts on the power play. So I like Jake DeBrusk a lot. I think I've got him for 60 points. A 60-point Jake DeBrusk season with, very good periffs, right? He's a bit of a dog, right? So you get some, you get some hits there, like 107 hits last year. I know you guys love that. How about 50 blocks? Bang!
Yeah,
we'll take it. We're loving that. And again, that power play, I think I've got him projected for 19 power play points, which would be a career high. I just like the floor on the player. And now he has access to all these efficient players on the Canucks. I think, we're going to see a career high season for Jake DeBrusk.
Bang.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I was going to say this was an eeny, meeny, miny, mo type of situation between Jake DeBrusk and Philip Hronek, just because of what we've seen overall from his career with the Boston Bruins. But I also like the potential and the ceiling that he can bring in the top 6 forward group, playing alongside whether it is JT Miller or Elias Pettersson. I also agree it should be DeBrusk on the first power play unit instead of Connor Garland, which is projected as of right now on daily faceoff. So I would like to see him on that right-hand side as well. Like you said, he digs, he battles for the pucks. He's great at getting the return on that side of things. But yeah, the ceiling for him getting in this new environment, he just didn't seem to really like the situation he was in the Bruins culture. And I'm not saying that he wasn't fitting into the culture, but maybe again, like, it was the opportunity that he wasn't getting and believe that he deserved at the time. So I think it's a fresh start. I think Rick Tocchet is going to be a wonderful coach for Jake DeBrusk as well, and getting him in that confident mindset on a consistent basis, game in, game out. So that's a huge thing that I'm looking for with Jake DeBrusk is what Rick Tocchet's going to do for him, but also, again, the veteran experience of JT Miller, if he is able to play on that top line with him, also with Elias Pettersson. So Jake DeBrusk is that number 5 option for me, but I think Philip Hronek as well. He brings some insightful opportunity and value on the back end right there with Quinn Hughes. So it was a pick-em situation, but I'm going to go with Jake DeBrusk as well.
I like that, Steele. And you know what? As 2 guys, and I'll speak for Steele on this one, from the East Coast, from the Toronto market, Maple Leafs fans, I just need to say honestly that the pressure, I think, is on the Vancouver Canucks this season to perform. And that angle, as a team who's consistently under unfair, probably unprecedented expectations in this rabid hockey market, which I don't appreciate when people disrespect Vancouver Canucks fans, because that is a rabid fan base who, in the playoffs, that barn was rocking, and it puts all Leafs fans to shame. So I need to come on here as an East Coast bud to say the Vancouver Canucks fan base, number one, has high expectations this year for this team. Regardless, it might be you in the cage, Blake, and the expectations will be high. So that's number one. And number two, if you can get a piece of either of those three top players, however we're ranking them, I think you're already set up for success. What happens during the season is what happens during the season. But the takeaway for today's episode, you got to be trying to get a piece of those top three. Blake, sign off here, brother. Hit me with your take on that. And again, appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, I love it, boys. I mean, the Canucks do this all the time. Leafs are very similar. Just by the way, I've got my East Coast lifestyle hat on here.
Hey,
you guys.
Hey, there we go.
Respect. I'm a Leafs fan, to be honest with you. Like, and fantasy hockey's done that to me. So I just love what they got going on there. So, but we're very much the same. Yeah, Canadian markets, it's a challenge, right? To block out the noise. So we'll see what they can do. But yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we're doing stuff over at Apples and Ginos right now. Nate and I, we did projections for all 32 teams, like all the top players. So we're basically going through each player and talking about that player. You know how, you guys, I'm just yammering on. Like I do that even more. These are 2-hour episodes, folks.
Whoa.
That's how we do.
They're long.
But we're getting the biz over there, so that's fine. But yeah, come check us out there. Check me out on Twitter at Blake Creamer AG, also at Apples Ginos. And we got a Discord. Get your biscuits in there. And then make sure you like and subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Hockey Boys. These guys are crushing. Oh my God.
Sir. You know you're always getting the biz with Blake Creamer over there. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much again for jumping on and getting, spending the time with us, breaking down the Vancouver Canucks top 5 fantasy targets. Once again, thank you so much to all of our listeners out there making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Make sure you also go check out the Locked On NHL podcast. We appreciate everyone that tunes in. Blake, once again, thank you so much. Absolutely love you. Love the content you're doing this summer as well, fantasy-wise. And we're excited to have you back on for the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Listener League. There's a lot of redemption for all three of us out there.
I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that.
We'll edit that out in post.
We'll edit that. But look, it's on three of us. Thank you again so much from both Flip, Blake, and I. We all wish you good luck with your bets this summer, and we shall see you back here again next week.
Peace.